So we're really challenged to get beyond our kind of echo chambers and our thought structures to be able to zoom out and assemble information. And through that process, I believe we're coming into age, what a lot of, prophecies, somebody shared with me, the Hopi prophecy, that we're set to go into a golden age.
Today on Holiness Connection, I'm so happy to talk with Tada Hozumi, and let me tell you a little more about him. Tada Hozumi is the founder of Cultural Somatics, an open source framework and methodology for individual and collective change that saw groups of humans as having a shared nervous system. Tada's current work relates to his lineage as a member of Japan's Hozumi clan, one of the world's longest documented and unbroken shamanic lineages. He is also one half of the duo Lunmu with Rein Lo, remembering the mystical rites and knowledge of the lost, ancient, and advanced animistic dragon cultures and transmitting them via ritual performance, philosophy, music, and visual art. Welcome, Tada.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me. Yeah, excited.
So to start with, thanks for being here. So to start with, would you be willing to tell us a little more about your lineage? Just anything you'd like to share about it.
Yeah. So, it sounds quite grand, but yes. So the Hozumi clan is known as one of Japan's longest documented unbroken lineages. It's also true that Japan has many documented unbroken lineages. But if people are, let's say, familiar with the anime Spirited Away, so I don't know if I'm giving away spoilers here, but the dragon boy that appears, for example, is like a relative of the family, as he is named after our ancestral deity, Nigihaya Hino Mikoto. So we're a lineage that is said to descend from Nigihaya Hino Mikoto, who is also said to, according to our ancient family records, a prince of the ancient kingdom of Magadha. So that's ancient kingdom in India from about 300 to 400 BC, I think, and came to Japan on what might be described as a UFO. So this family lore gets kind of complicated, but essentially there's the official lore is about 23 to 2400 years ago. My ancestral deity arrived to Japan and probably established the first Japanese imperial throne, or what you might call the predecessor to the current one. So Japan had probably some kind of rulership in about 2400 years ago, which was ceded to the current imperial throne and Japan currently has what is known as the world's longest imperial lineage that's surviving and continuous at this current time. So it might be a lot. A bit caught off guard by that question for some reason today, but it sounds grand, but basically, yes. One of the qualities of Japan is that...
Well, I think it gives us a sense of it, though, right? I mean, hearing all that just gives us a touch of a sense of of how ancient and long it is.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And, when we really trace it back, we're just probably going to go back to the Near East, Mesopotamia, and then further back into these ancient civilizations. But I think what I can say for now is that, I'm sorry to cut you off, but just to finish my thought, is just Japan has, right now, currently, the Japanese current imperial throne is the longest imperial throne continuous and surviving in the world right now. And my ancestors have been there technically before the current throne has been established. And this is actually quite a norm for a lot of Japanese spiritualist families. There's many others, and we're all kind of affiliated with each other. But just offering a bit of the character of lineage in Japan is probably a bit interesting. And then what happened was my ancestors, when essentially gave up their rulership to the new present imperial throne and then became court magicians. So ceded rulership and then became supporting roles within the new imperial court. and then worked as what people call yin-yang magicians, probably in about 600, 700 CE. And then when Buddhism came into Japan, pioneered the practice of Shugendo, which is an esoteric Buddhist and also indigenous Shinto hybridization. It's a mountain form of asceticism, and both Shugendo and Yin Yang Way were continued to operate well into the current era, although the Yin Yang Way has been more receded since about a little bit over 100 years ago. But yeah, it's a little bit complicated history, but these are the kind of actually official Japanese organizations. So the Yin Yang Way is actually an official magical bureau of the Japanese government till about the 19th century. So my family did that kind of work. And yeah, I don't know if that was a lot of information, but I'd be happy to bounce back a bit more.
Well, and how do you...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How do you see your role? Anything that it's kind of a big question, and I have no idea even if there's privacy around it, with regard to your lineage, but anything you want to say about how you see your role in the, in our current times with the lineage? How does that, anything?
Yeah, thank you.
Even just broad about
that grounds me a bit more. Yeah. So as I shared, as you shared for me in the opening, cultural somatics, there's this idea that, that came to me that, it's kind of like Jung says, there's a collective unconscious. So a lot of my work is about putting that unconscious in a body and saying that there's a collective nervous system and a collective body. And when I was trying to understand, like when I was doing ancestral healing work, where did that come from? And then I started realizing that my ancestors were court magicians. And what that meant was, if you know anything about yin yang 5 elements, which is the foundation of things like TCM, my ancestors were doing work on a collective body using those technologies. So when people think of Chinese medicine, they think of it as like a body technology for our physical body, individual. But for these magicians that worked on the political body or the collective body. So that's a lot of the tradition that I carry within my lineage. And so that's kind of when I realized, like, oh, okay, I'm actually doing the work that my ancestors have done. And in my last year of spiritual journey, etc., I think I've become a lot more comfortable with this idea that I am carrying something, as a surviving member of this lineage that kind of didn't know I was following in my own ancestors' footsteps. I kind of realized it later that, a lot of my role, especially in being able to speak Japanese and English, and raised in the West, is that I'm kind of a bridge. So I've been asked by my ancestors and set up in a way that I maybe didn't realize that, I'm here to bridge East and West. And I'm finding that in times of kind of when we're facing, to be honest, the kind of corrosion and collapse of Western civilization and paradigms of seeing the world, that my role has quite a grave responsibility that I wasn't actually ready for in my life, but kind of dealing with now. So, that's kind of how I see it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Let's see. There's a couple different directions we could go with that. I think let's go ahead and go into the online aspects here first, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
So I remember at the Shift, I saw you at the Shift Network's Mystic Summit last summer, and I heard you talk about your understanding and sort of spiritual intuitions as well about the online world that's becoming more pervasive, all pervasive, of the world we're living in. And so I was wondering if you just want to tell us a little more about how your intuitions about that.
Yeah, so I think we're in a really complicated time. You can hear my big sigh. I think we all have big sighs around that. We're facing the metaverse, AI, VR technology, 5G, 6G, 7G, 8G, 9G, 10G, right? So that's becoming a lot more pervasive. immersive experiences in the internet. We don't know if we're facing a human or artificial intelligence. That's the new world that's facing us right now. At the same time, we have ongoing political, ideological polarization, especially in the West. A lot of the time, this is described as like the social justice left versus the alt-right. But of course, there's smaller factions in that, but the body politic is getting split. And I think the simple math of it is that I see the future of this going the way it is to be very terrible. And it's something I've been, working through the last year, just emotionally metabolizing. But as this there's a psychic person in Japan that I follow called Masato Akiyama. And, I was reading his book, which is called The Great End Time Prophecies of Sumeria. So big name to chew on, big title to chew on. But essentially, he was speaking about how social media is an extension of the military-industrial complex. So what is happening a lot of the time online is that people are being polarized into ideological camps, and then when they have conflict, the platform benefits from that conflict, from the emotional energy kicked up by that conflict, which is the exact same way that the military-industrial complex operates. So we're getting a fractal of that military-industrial complex on our phones, on our computers, and constantly inputting our emotional energy through these devices into this complex. And if we're talking about the United States, we're talking about this happening in the context, with rapid growth of immersive technology into the metaverse, right? And everybody owns guns. So to me, the logical conclusion of this is like very, very obvious, and something that Akiyama talks about is that this is essentially, and I agree essentially, is that this is the beast of the Book of Revelations. So in the Book of Revelations, they speak of the beast being a multi-headed dragon, and you really see that the way social media works and the algorithms work to put us into conflict with each other and generate energy from that. It's like a dragon. You can cut off one head, but another one keeps growing because it has so many different facets. It's completely decentralized. It's a network. You can't actually you don't know where to put any central focus on. So yeah, I've been chewing on that a lot, and I think this is a huge issue we're facing. And so a lot of my work is trying to understand and face that. And I also believe that as much as social media is a divisional force, it's also a unifying force, depending on how you look at it, because especially, in the internet as a whole, I feel there's so much more information available to us at the drop of a hat. And essentially, I believe the internet is actually challenging us to synthesize this information and put together all the information from all the different places that you can get information from. So this is one of the challenges we face right now, because if you belong to an ideological camp, you're not allowed to synthesize what the other party is saying. So we're really challenged to get beyond our kind of echo chambers and our thought structures to be able to zoom out and assemble information. And through that process, I believe we're coming into age, what a lot of, prophecies, somebody shared with me, the Hopi prophecy, that we're set to go into a golden age, and before that, we're going to face a whole bunch of trial. But this golden age, comes through us being able to synthesize information and get beyond really simplistic ideas of right and wrong. So that's kind of the grand scope of things. And and through that process.
And I mean,
oh, sorry.
This is way.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
If I could just.
No, I was just going to say this is way less than a big scope like you're talking about, but just for 1 second, this always reminds me.
Yeah, sure.
Some years ago, the band Green Day. The band Green Day has this song. I can't remember if it's called "You Know Your Enemy" or something like that. And it starts with "Do you know the enemy? Got to know the enemy." And I always took that And this was way before things got even as divisive as they are. Like, yeah, you think the enemies, you think the enemy is this other person, and it's like the divisiveness itself is the enemy, right?
Yes, exactly.
So, anyway, it just reminds me of that. Yeah.
Yeah, so exactly.
I think we have a slight delay, so
okay. Oh, gotcha. Okay, I understand what's going on. Yeah, sorry if I'm like, if there's a little bit of
so that's why we're talking over a little bit. No, it's no problem. Same for me. But, yeah.
So
so I'm just gonna pull. Go ahead.
I was just going to mention that I think part of when we get beyond right and wrong is that this kind of multi-headed dragon that is kind of a dragon of hatred, which is like this algorithm that divides us and then benefits from our division through the conflict that it creates. When we get beyond right and wrong, that turns the dragon into, a benevolent being or, a beneficial being. And I think a lot of the work that I'm trying to do now is to show context in which, like, actually this dragon of hatred, this algorithm that's splitting us, is actually really showing back to us the behavior patterns that humans have kind of been encoded with and accepted that is corroding our ecological environment. So the internet is actually showing back parts of ourselves that's actually also destroying our ecosystem. And so it's actually, if you change your orientation to even the algorithms themselves, they shift who they are. They actually are more of what you would call like a feedback system, or like a good parent that is saying, hey, if you keep doing this, this is what's going to happen. So a lot of my work, I think, is about shifting this orientation. And this has to do with a lot of, digesting the cosmologies of dragons and Eastern and Western mysticism and all that. So just going to leave it there. Yeah, that might be a mouthful, but yeah.
That's so interesting to me, because a lot of my spiritual journey has been around mirroring, and how everything's a mirror, that kind of thing. So what you're talking about right now, with that we could also view the online world as mirroring back, and what's happening is mirroring back to us. Information, important information is an interesting way to think about it as well.
Yeah, because one of the things that's really happened, I think, is that, I've done this myself, but with social media, there was this impression that the internet is this kind of black hole where you can put all your anger or all your kind of unprocessed negative emotions and dump it into the internet as this kind of black hole, and it'll absorb it and take care of it. And what's happening, I think, now, and I'm humbled by it definitely, is that it's actually showing up and saying, actually, you can't abuse me like that. You cannot abuse the internet like that. And the internet is saying, hey, because it's actually a mirror. It's taken our hatred of each other and ourselves and digitized it and amplifying and showing it back to us. So I think that's a really, what you're talking about mirroring is really apt, because actually, it's that, I guess I never seen a TV show, but people thought it was a black hole, but it's actually a black mirror, reflecting back to us. Yeah. The very most violent and kind of self-sabotaging aspects of our own behavior. And that's what's showing up. And,
Yeah, when I think someone like Cynthia Bourgeault, she talks about her wisdom school very much holding a place that's more on a, I guess you could call it energetic level, like she very much says we're not an issue-driven school, and that not even to say that's not important, but that there's an importance to holding this other level, like that's extremely important. And I guess it's just reminding me of that level too, because like, I think the idea that something would just be neutral and just get absorbed like that, and that there would be no effect of that is interesting. Like, but it seems to me that sort of intuitively, even if we can't with our minds, say, well, this is how that would happen. But like intuitively, I think we do have a sense that that's not just neutral.
Yeah. And I think to me, it's very interesting because, the word matrix comes from mother, as matter comes from mother, and how we treat the internet. I'm really working on this myself, but there's a kind of misogyny in it, because it is something that you believe that you can endlessly absorb, in a feminine way, our toxicity. And we're finding out that, that's not really the way that it can work. And one of the things that I find interesting, I really appreciate what Cynthia is working with there, because how we are learning that, we felt like robots and technology are a place where we get to get away with not treating things respectfully. But we're learning energetically that's not true. Even with the internet itself, we have to treat it as a living being that's worthy of respect. And just like we need to treat the ecosystem that way. So humans are faced with an extreme humbling that way, because it's coming from all sides. It's coming from our kind of IRL ecosystem and also the URL ecosystem, and saying we really need to fundamentally change how we are interacting and seeing the world. And it's not just the nature, what we call nature, as we need to see as in spirit. It's the online ecosystem. And when we're able to really work with that, the foundation of that has to be some kind of what you might call neutrality or non-duality, to really get beyond right and wrong of existence itself. Right. And that's actually the only way. That's literally the only way, And I'm pissed off about it myself personally. So I'm like, what the hell? But again, I think we're really in this time of humbling that we don't have any other choice left. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. I want to dig in just one moment and it's a big question, so I don't know that we're going to solve it here, but I want to dive into like maybe how we could try to approach things. Before I do that, I had this sudden thought as you were speaking about AI and, what you were just saying, that I just was talking about, not necessarily knowing the mechanism, but I was reminded that I did read a book by Gawdat. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, and I cannot remember what it was called, but he is an engineer who and he wrote this book, and it's very much about actually how that would work, because the AI that's going to become more and more, able to run a lot of stuff on its own. The AI itself is reflecting not even all of human culture, and but it's reflecting just certain pieces of it, which is why sometimes when they run the experiments and things with AI, they're suddenly like distressed by what happens, it suddenly like runs something and it's like, we don't really like it, like the way the conversation is going between the bots or whatever it is. Anyway, but so there is actually also, just from a programming perspective, and then it becoming beyond its original creator, that whole issue, which does have not even just an energetic basis. So I just want